Please welcome Brad Parks and Julian Cates.
All right, this is amazing. And I was talking to Julian before. I don't know how much longer we can do this joke because we've done it a few times. But 5 years ago, how many people thought they would be in an absolute standing room only meeting talking about a problem we all thought we had solved a decade ago around virtualization? It is definitely a hot topic, and it's never been a more interesting time. But I'm Brad Parks, so I manage go-to-market, product, wear a lot of other hats with the Morpheus data team, but now as part of HPE, I'm responsible for the Cloud Ops software suite, some of our private cloud initiatives, and really excited to be sharing the stage yet again with my partner in crime, Julian.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Julian Cates. I am product management for HPE Morpheus VM Essentials worldwide, so absolutely love talking about the new solution to the problem that we solved 10 years ago.
So I'm going to start off talking a little bit about just kind of the lay of the land. Quick warning, things change. Don't buy stock based on what I say. All the legalese, I'm sure you've read this wholeheartedly in the next 30 seconds. But we're going to kick this off, do a little bit of welcome, turn it over to Julian. We're going to go deep on VM Essentials if this is your first time covering VME. We'll give you the baseline, but a lot of new things actually that came out this week or are coming in the next few months. So we are going to talk a bit of some forward looking because there's a lot on the roadmap. Really excited to have a customer with us talking about VM Essentials in production. We've actually had several hundred deployments already this year. I've got even HPE internal ITs actually migrated over 1,500 their VMs over to VM Essentials. So I want to kind of hear from some folks on the ground. Then I want to talk about the rest of the portfolio from the Morpheus perspective and talk about Morpheus Enterprise. But, first, it's our birthday, right?
It is.
It is our birthday. It was a year ago that we launched VM Essentials at this event. Now, at the time we launched it, it was just called HPE VM Essentials. Later in the year, we kind of fixed the glitch and brought it back under the Morpheus umbrella because it's Morpheus VM Essentials. It really is part of the same software stack. But this is a slide we actually used at that time, and it hasn't changed that much. Still talking to a lot of customers where they're seeing, obviously, cost increases. The economics have changed. It's why we're all in this room. But that inflection point is really, I think, highlighting this journey that customers are on, not just for virtualization, but for hybrid cloud as a whole, right? People are reevaluating multiple hypervisors, taking this opportunity to maybe change the pace at which they're adopting containers and the platforms they're using, also reevaluating their mix of private and public cloud. What does that mean? More things in more places with more complexity, but I'm guessing everyone here did not get an incremental investment in headcount and resources to deal with this ever-expanding complexity. So it's really put a focal point on the need for orchestration, for automation, for platform thinking, and so that's what we're going to go into today. Now, I think there have been some lessons learned over the last year, and we're gonna unpack those a little bit throughout the time, but first and foremost, when we've been talking with customers who are on this journey and thinking about their virtualization experience, where you are today and understanding deeply the types of workloads that you're running. What is your posture around utilization of stacks, licensing, understanding the density, where you're at with your various infrastructure is very important. So first we're going to dig into a little bit about that analytics. How do you establish a baseline? Then, again, I'm going to kick it over to Julian. We're going to talk a little bit more about that rationalization discussion, about how you can utilize things like VM Essentials to right-size your cost and start to get on this journey. But then lastly, I'm going to come in and talk a bit about how we can get you to that full cloud operating model, because most of the customers that I talk to are honestly annoyed that we're having to think about virtualization now. We want to get back to thinking about the cloud operating model. How can you enable your internal teams to move faster in a much more efficient way? And that's really a prerequisite for doing things around AI and next-gen workloads. So we don't just want to wallow in hypervisor discussions. We want to get to that cloud operating model. So Thinking about insight, this is where HPE's Cloud Physics asset comes in. So for those who are not familiar with Cloud Physics, this is an acquisition HPE did a number of years ago, but it is a free analytics tool that HPE partners can use alongside you to really inspect and interrogate the virtual infrastructure that you have today to present you back with a lot of good data to establish that baseline. Get an understanding of what license are you using? What features and functions within the VMware stack are you using? What is the density like within your various platforms? And provide some recommendations around how you might improve that, whether that's re-platforming some of those workloads to something like VM Essentials and KVM, whether that's different infrastructure refresh options to improve your density, improve your performance. All of that presented in a way that's very easy to consume. And that really is where this discussion starts. If you don't have visibility into what you have, you're not going to be able to establish where you want to go. So step one, really recommend everybody take advantage of that. Like I said, it's free. It's very non-intrusive. We can run that and get you the baseline. And that's going to give you the opportunity to have a starting point as you start to dig into step two, which I am going to hand over to Julian, and I'll be back in just a little bit.
Thank you, Brad. So with the room as full as this is, obviously you've heard a little something at least about VM Essentials software and what it does and what it brings in the hypervisor market. But let's talk a little bit about that. So why would you look at VM Essentials? What does it bring? For one thing, it helps to reduce costs. And let's be honest, a lot of the decisions that are being driven right now and why folks are looking at virtualization alternatives is driven from cost. So with a licensing model that's per socket as opposed to per core and a very modest acquisition cost, I mean, we're poised with VM Essentials to really help you save some money in running our hypervisor and our virtualization solution for your workloads. It also helps to manage and unify the management of both the underlying ESX hypervisor as well as the HVM hypervisor. So you can manage both of these under the same control plane and have a single point of management for all of those. It also helps, if you do that, to ease the transition from one hypervisor to another, because it sort of homogenizes the access to management for that. Also, this helps to basically future-proof your environment here, because while this is available as standalone software, it's also available bundled with our private cloud solutions, so as part of Private Cloud Business Edition, or built on DHCI, or built on SimpliVity. It also, as Brad talked about, this is Morpheus, right? So we've got Morpheus Enterprise, we've got Morpheus VM Essentials. If you start with VM Essentials, you have an upgrade path to go into Enterprise. It's really just the same software. With Essentials has some of the features turned off that Enterprise has. So you have a path to go from the entry point of Essentials up into Enterprise. And lastly, as HPE, we like to believe and hope that we are a trusted partner for you, and you can count on us for solid support and for our partnerships in the virtualization ecosystem, right? So, having a hypervisor is great, but having all those integrations that need to come along with that, all those ISV software for backup, for recovery, for all the various applications that run on top of the hypervisor, that's where building out that global ecosystem is key, and we believe HPE has the cachet to forge those relationships and to build that ecosystem out. So I mentioned that this is available not only as standalone software, but also available as part of our private cloud solutions. So if you were to buy VM Essentials today, you could do so in an entire package solution based on our private cloud. So there's a couple of flavors of that are available today. One being the Private Cloud Business Edition based on the HPE Alletra B10000 system. So this is a DHCI system, so it gets fantastic performance with predictable latency. We've got 100% data availability guarantee on that storage platform, which is fantastic. And it allows you to scale independently the storage and compute sections of that infrastructure. On the other side, really optimized, particularly for those remote locations and for the edge. That's where we've got SimpliVity also built with VM Essentials. So that allows us to have the very smallest footprint for those remote locations. It's got built-in data protection and data mobility as well. So you've got some optionality there in terms of how you both acquire and deploy the infrastructure for your virtualization. And don't take our word for it. If we look at Enterprise Strategy Group, who's done an analysis of folks making the switch from VMware to VM Essentials with our HVM hypervisor, right? Again, I go back to the point of the real impetus for even looking at alternatives was cost, let's be honest. So this delivers in spades the ability to reduce the cost of your virtualization, whether that's just simply the cost of acquiring the licenses, whether that's fully burdened and factored in the cost of making the switch, right? Because there's migration that's involved, and that's no small task. But even so, factoring that all in over, say, a TCO over a 5-year period, there is considerable savings that you can achieve with VM Essentials. And again, whether that's standalone or specific savings that you see for mission-critical enterprise workloads running on the PCBE with DHCI or with SimpliVity. But it's not all about cost savings, right? You have to have the features and the functionality within the product itself to make sure it's the right move for you to make. So you look at Morpheus VM Essentials, right? There's honestly, as Brad said, this is our birthday. We introduced the product a year ago, but it's not a new product, okay? Based on technologies that have been around for quite some time. KVM, hardened, proven in the industry. The Morpheus control plane, we're on version 8 of that. It's been around for a long time. And again, VM Essentials is Morpheus. It's not a new product. From that perspective, it is that same stack that's been built and developed over the last several years. You need enterprise-grade security, right? So with encryption and multi-factor authentication and multiple authentication sources that you can configure and use. It needs to be highly available. So workload balancing, DRS, failover, maintenance mode, all those types of things that you would come to expect has to be there, and it is in there in VM Essentials, along with native built-in capabilities to do backup. So if you've got an ISV that you work with for backup, fantastic. If you just need something to get the job done, it's got that built in, so you've got that capability. And then, of course, the ability to do synchronous replication if you're using the Electra MP platform, the B10000, and coming a little bit down the road, the ability to take that and do stretch clustering based on that as well. So it's an upcoming feature that, particularly in this geographical area, there's a lot of interest in, and we're really happy to be able to bring that to market. And of course, as HPE, we've got a considerable workforce. We've got a lot of resources that are dedicated for service, for support. So we can help you with both deployment and then troubleshooting and every single step along the way of deploying this new virtualization technology in your own environment. From a hardware perspective, we'd love that if you would run that on HPE gear. Believe me, we would absolutely love to sell you the servers for that. However, it's not a mandatory thing, right? If you've got an environment today with servers from other companies, with storage from other companies, the whole idea is that this is software. It should run on those environments. So we are both validating our software and our solution on other hardware platforms from competitors, from third parties. So you can feel comfortable that it will run. And then lastly, building out the ecosystem. And I'm going to actually go to the next slide here and talk a little bit about that ecosystem. So building up that ecosystem of partners whose software is built to run with VM Essentials and our HVM hypervisor, that gives you that comfort, those proof points to know that those workloads that you depend on to run your business are going to work on VM Essentials as well. So just a sampling here. If we look at data protection, for instance, solutions to go beyond that built-in backup capability, we're coming out with Zerto support for HVM that allows for continuous data protection, near real-time RPOs with continuous data protection. And then our partners in the data protection space, Veeam, Cohesity, Commvault, all of those working to have solutions for HVM for backup and recovery of that. And then a number of solutions have been validated already, meaning our internal teams have tested these, they've validated them, they know that they work, they've put together architectures around these, and provided collateral for how to configure these in your environment. So from databases to VDI to analytics and monitoring, security, video management, across the board. We'll continue to validate these workloads. It's a little hard to do them all at once, so this is not by any means the end-all be-all list of the solutions that run on VM Essentials, but these are the ones that we've validated thus far with those extra proof points. And then if we look at the plugins that are native into VM Essentials, beyond the integrations with the switching technologies that we have from Aruba, the storage technologies we've got with Alletra MP, there's a number of plugins for, say, things like IP address management, DNS registration, networking, security, you name it. I want to double click a little bit on data protection here. I know Veeam is one of those partners that we've been working with, and they actually are about to release a beta. Actually, they already have released a beta of their support for HVM. So just show of hands, how many of you would be interested in knowing more about that beta, potentially running Veeam software for HVM? All right, lots of hands going up here. So I'm just going to click over here. If you see the QR code there, feel free to grab a picture of that or scan it or what have you. This is going to take you right to the announcement from Veeam for their support of HVM. And follow that link. It'll take you right to the instructions for everything that you need to know in order to participate in that beta. Give you just a second for those that are trying to grab a shot of that. Okay. I mentioned Zerto. So Zerto is continuous data protection for disaster recovery in support of, they support VMware today, absolutely, but also supporting HVM. And we're announcing, I believe we announced that yesterday, that is coming, and we're expecting to see that in the next month or so, and we're expecting that to be available. So you'll be able to do both continuous data protection and prepare yourselves for disaster recovery should that be necessary. Not only that, but it's got some cool features like being able to detect anomalies in the data stream. So if you've got a ransomware actor or somebody like that coming in, encrypting a bunch of your data, those patterns can be recognized and brought to your attention so that you are aware of them. By the way, there is a session specifically on Zerto software. That's the session, the business breakout 1040 here. And there's also a demo on the showroom floor, so demo 1169. So if that is something that's of keen interest to you, by all means, please feel free to swing by there and take a look at the demo for that. Okay, I want to give you just a quick glimpse into pretty much the capabilities that Morpheus VM Essentials software has. As Brad said, and as we really try to emphasize over and over again, VM Essentials is Morpheus. I like to say that it's optimized for the mission of delivering virtualization. Brad will tell you that it's Morpheus Enterprise with a bunch of stuff turned off. Either way you look at it, it is the same software product with a subset of the features that are available in Enterprise. So what is that subset? So of course, the central management component here is VM Essentials Manager. That's the Morpheus software goodness there. That's the appliance that you log into for the central management plane for both the HVM hypervisor as well as any VMware that you've got in your environment as well. So you can manage both of those from a single control plane. And under the same control plane, that gives us the easy ability to scan those virtual machine workloads on VMware, figure out which ones of those we want to migrate over, potentially down the road, or if there's going to be some time where we potentially are going to run dual hypervisors. But this positions us so that you've got a single methodology for managing both of those hypervisors at the same time. So from a functionality standpoint, we've got the ability to provision new VM workloads. All right, so VM vending. There's also some automation capabilities built into VM Essentials itself. So if you've ever wanted to, I want to deploy this new VM workload, but there's some automations that I'd like to run as part of that deployment exercise, you can actually define those automations in VM Essentials, and you can attach those automations to your deployment. And as you deploy that new virtual machine workload, those deployments can run to go do any number of things. Register with an external service, install software, what have you. That applies, again, since it's a single management console, to both the HVM side of things as well as to the ESX side of things. From a governance standpoint, right, so identity management, single sign-on, there's a number of identity providers that are supported. Pretty much you name it, if it's something that you log into to establish your identity, it's going to be supported by VM Essentials. There are a number of services that are built in as well. So Cypher. Cypher is a secure secrets storage capability directly in VM Essentials. So for those automations that you run, you've got to log in to a service, provide credentials. You can store those securely in the Cypher store, and then reference those safely and securely without exposing anything in plain text in your automations. Also, as we mentioned, integrations that you get with IP address management, DNS, backup and recovery, et cetera. So remember this view. We'll revisit it in just a little bit, and we'll do a kind of a compare and contrast between what you get at the Essentials layer and what you get at the Enterprise layer and what that brings. And also remember that there's always a path between those. So you can start here if you want, and then move to the larger feature set of Enterprise. So here's the fun part that I get to talk about, both some of the things that we've released into the product recently, as well as some of those things that are coming down the pike here in some upcoming releases in the next couple of quarters or so. So we talked about automation and high availability with DRS, automatic workload balancing and placement, cluster balancing based on the busyness of the servers that make up the cluster. A migration capability built directly into VM Essentials itself, so you can manage those moves from VMware into HVM. A number of storage options are supported. We've embedded this as part of private cloud. Microsegmentation, that's a thing that often gets brought up in enterprise environments. Folks running maybe software-defined storage today with NSX and want to have that same level of security with isolating workloads one from another. Today we do that through an integration with a switch, an Aruba switch, the CX10000. We'll talk a little bit in the coming next section here about what we're doing with software-defined networking that doesn't require an external switch in order to do that secure microsegmentation. So also, affinity and anti-affinity policies to really flesh out our DRS capabilities here. So things that are coming up, Kubernetes on HVM, Zerto, we've talked a little bit about that. Performance enhancements for HVM, with some of those performance enhancements, I'll talk about those in a little bit more detail in a coming slide, but you're getting very close to the level of bare metal performance with a hypervisor. And this allows us to run workloads that are enterprise level, that are demanding from a performance standpoint, and run those with ease, and you can run them with confidence. Enhanced migration. So migration features there today, we're adding some capabilities to that to make it even easier and more robust. Image-based backup with Veeam. We talked a little bit about that. Stretch clusters, the ability to do metro area, campus area clusters that can survive single-site failures. Software-defined networking. Confidential computing, and I'll get into a slide about that as well with more details, but this gives us the ability to protect the memory states and to make sure that the environment that we're booting up is the environment we thought it was. We don't have anybody coming in and injecting malware or anything like that into our boot devices. And then a constant expansion of the ecosystem of partners for both hardware and software that is in support of VM Essentials. Let's kind of double click on a little bit of those coming features. So migration, it's available now. We introduced that in 8.0.8, and it works great. It's a great means to get VM workloads migrated over from VMware into HVM. We're enhancing that in an upcoming version here, so we'll give more scale to the concurrent transfers that can happen. It's going to be higher reliability. We're adding the ability to migrate into NFS targets, and then also to migrate from one HVM cluster to another HVM cluster. So we'll add that capability into that. And then we're putting APIs and CLI interfaces into that as well. Software-defined networking. This is very exciting to talk about. As a matter of fact, I don't have it listed here on the slide, but we're actually showing this on the demo floor as well. So if you go to demo 328, I believe it is, you can see a demonstration of that software-defined networking, which again provides zero trust capabilities, microsegmentation, in an overlay networking fashion without having to rely on external switching to provide that. And of course, coming soon, stretched clusters. I know, again, especially for this region, it's of keen interest to nearly everyone that I've talked to, really. So being able to bring that to market here and have a stretched cluster solution that works very much the same way that a VMware stretched cluster would work with HPE, we're very excited to bring that. Performance enhancements, this is where I talked about getting to single percentage differences between running a hypervisor and running a workload on bare metal. We're going to automatically align to NUMA boundaries, so we don't have to cross those, and we don't take a performance hit for going outside of those boundaries. We'll keep everything contained to local NUMA nodes, and that way the memory and the CPU threads that are assigned can be aligned and benefit from the locality that brings. And lastly here, confidential computing. I talked a little bit about that and what it brings, but this allows for us to basically encrypt not just the storage at rest, but the memory and everything that's going on with that VM as it's running, and protect that. So if somebody comes along and dumps the memory, they're not going to be able to look at the strings that are in there and find credit card numbers and that sort of thing. They're just going to get a bunch of encrypted data. So it protects your sensitive data, and it also gives us the ability to verify and attest that we've got a trusted execution environment that we're standing up. That also is demoed on the showroom floor in demo booth 506. But enough from me. Let's hear from a customer and hear about their experience in selecting and deploying VM Essentials software for their enterprise. So we've got Adam Janssens here, Director of Infrastructure and Operations for the Western Canada Lottery Corporation. And they're transforming their IT operations with Morpheus VM Essentials to cut costs, boost resilience, and modernize their operations. So let's go ahead and bring Adam up here, and let's hear what his experience is. So Adam, welcome to the stage.
Thanks, Julian.
Yep. All right. So, Adam, tell us a little bit about yourself, about Western Canada Lottery Corporation, and what are your business priorities?
Yeah, thanks, Julian. First, thanks for having me here in Barcelona. It's a beautiful city. It's, wow, what a full room. This is great. I think there's a lot of, obviously the interest here, there's a lot of dislike for some other hypervisor customer that, but sorry, yeah, back to, so yeah, Adam Janssens, Director of Infrastructure Operations at Western Canada Lottery Corporation. So Western Canada Lottery Corporation, for those that don't know, in Canada we have 10 provinces and 3 territories. So we operate the lottery for 3 of the provinces and all of the territories in the north. It's great that each of the provinces do something a little bit different with the funds raised. For example, in our middle province called Saskatchewan, they're very vocal about where the funds go. They have 4 main pillars. A couple of the pillars that the funds go to is to help kids play sports, to do culture initiatives. So that's what Western Canada Lottery is, and that's what we run and operate the technology that enables the sale of lottery for those provinces.
Gotcha. So obviously you guys are looking at VM Essentials software and have selected that. What was that compelling issue that really caused you to start looking at alternatives there?
Yeah, great question, and it's probably the same as why this room is full is obviously the rising costs, right? Kind of like Brad said earlier is, hey, I thought we solved this VM issue years ago. Why are we all here? So that's obviously the main driver. We've got just under 800. We're not a large organization, but just 800 VMs running on VMware with obviously different renewal rates. And the challenges we've had, one, cost for sure. So we've seen in our renewals anywhere from 3.5 to 5 times cost increase, right? Which is crazy. So that's why we're driving to look at something else. The other challenge we've had is just the challenges in support and getting clear answers. And yesterday we could buy vSphere Standard, and no, you can only buy VCF, and just it's been a really challenge. So we're definitely looking for alternatives, and that's why we've chosen VM Essentials as a target solution.
Awesome. There's a lot of alternatives that are out there. There are a lot of choices you could have made.
Right.
Why was it ultimately that you chose VM Essentials?
Great question. So definitely costs. When we looked at other alternatives that are actually out on the showroom floor, were the same price as what we saw, same cost as the rising costs from VMware. The other big piece is support. Definitely if running a 24/7 shop, the lottery needs to be available and operating all the time. So having that enterprise grade support that we know and can trust and we've had for years from HPE was a huge, huge factor in why we were choosing it.
Awesome. So, with that in mind, I've got to ask, how's it going? How's that experience been?
Great question. So, for everybody in the room, we haven't got rid of VMware. It's definitely a journey. So we've just started our journey. We're early days. We've executed the purchase of 22 sockets, which is just getting us started. So right now where we're at is we've got it installed and our tech teams are running around playing with it, just getting their feet wet, so to speak. Actually, we've got amazing support from, I don't know, do I have to say Morpheus, is that the HPE?
The HPE team, yeah.
The HPE team.
We're all one team.
We've got excellent support in getting it up and running, getting our feet wet, getting the training that we need, figuring out how we're going to convert workloads. So we haven't moved any production workloads. So again, like I said earlier, we're early in the journey, 22 sockets. However, we are looking to deploy and expand our dev and test environments very shortly. So with 800 VMware licenses or VMs that we have, we've looked at the map of them. They all have different renewal rates. So we're mapping out when does it make sense to migrate those workloads over to VME. So we have a kind of a 2-year plan, I would say. But as the renewals come up, let's test and make sure that we can move over to VME. And the other piece that I would say is definitely looking forward to a lot of the announcements that you talked about earlier. We are a Veeam backup customer, so having the image-based backup is going to be huge for us. That was one of the sort of, I would say, showstoppers for us before we'd put our production workloads over to VME.
Well, I'm guessing, show of hands probably sounds familiar to the journey that a lot of the folks in this room are on, right? Getting into packages that has software they might not need, that cost increases, thinking about backup. I guess from the journey perspective, I'd ask, is there, are you staying with virtualization, 100% virtualized? Are you looking at kind of other application formats, other functionality, maybe a little public cloud? What's next if you went forward 12 months?
Yeah, no, great question, Brad. So right now we have 2 data centers that run active-active. So I would say long-term journey, which I'll maybe put in a plug for Zerto as well, between VME and Zerto is we would love to get to a spot where maybe we can have 1 data center. So I have all our virtual workloads running in VME, and if there's with Zerto and with VME to be able to replicate to a cloud in minutes or seconds and save the cost of running a totally
DR
separate.
side. All right.
Yeah.
Public cloud has DR.
The other piece is definitely looking to migrate all of our workloads, all of our production workloads over to VME, and like I said, in 2 years, say goodbye to Broadcom. How about that?
Nice. I know we've been a good partner with VMware for a long time on the Morpheus side, probably turned thousands of vCenter clusters into true private clouds, and it is a journey. I think we see we see companies being more heterogeneous, not less, right? Things get messy, and that's where we got to get time back. So I guess with that, maybe I can say thank you for for taking the time. Appreciate sharing your story, being one of the early ones, and look forward to seeing where you go here over the next year.
Thanks, Brent.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Julian.
So with that, I think I'd like to pick up where that left off and talk a little bit about what I kicked off with, which was that hybrid cloud operating model. And one of the things I've noticed in talking with a lot of customers over the last year, or really over the last 5 or 6 years, is hybrid cloud is almost an inevitability more than a strategy for a lot of companies, particularly larger enterprises where you have a certain affinity for a given hypervisor or a given container cluster technology. But over time, you end up with a mishmash of a little VMware. You're evaluating some hypervisor alternatives. So you've got VMware and some KVM, hopefully running on our HVM stack. Could be somebody else's. You've also got a mix of VMs and containers. That container strategy might be Team A, who really likes Rancher, Team B, who loves OpenShift, and then you just did an M&A, and that customer or that new division might be using public cloud. So you end up with a fairly complicated situation. One of the things we talk a lot about is the cloud operating model. So I want to unpack kind of what that means. What makes the cloud a cloud? Why are people driving to this in the first place? So sitting above that base runtime layer, what are we trying to get from a cloud experience, right? What drove masses of people to the public cloud in the first place? One of the first ones is time, right? It has traditionally taken a lot of time to spin up new infrastructure for application workloads. And if you go back 10, 15 years, right? Software eating the world. You had teams needing to deploy workloads in minutes and not wait, days, if not weeks, for new application infrastructure. Also needed to improve efficiency, right? How we're paying for that, moving from CapEx to OpEx models, thinking about sharing infrastructure, using insights to constantly optimize and maintain that shared infrastructure. Not only effectiveness, but also efficiency. So thinking about how do you get observability in a more consistent way across those environments? How do you think about automating different sets of routine work so you're taking time out of the equation? And then lastly, risk, right? How are you able to, like Adam said, maybe think about using different cloud endpoints for disaster recovery? How are you thinking about governance, policy? These are really signature benefits you get from a well-managed hybrid cloud operating model. I think, though, when I go out and talk to customers, the distance between aspiration, where a lot of customers want to get to, and where they are today, it can vary. And I think one of the reasons it can vary a lot is this, right? The heterogeneous mess that is the day-to-day work of pretty much everybody in this room, I would guess, right? If you're thinking about this from an end customer standpoint, the end user of IT, your application developers, your data scientists, your product teams, they're asking for infrastructure from you and your teams. And they're saying, hey, I might be doing this through a ServiceNow front end, or I may want to hit a CI/CD pipeline. I might want to do it as code with something like Terraform. Then you have to ask yourself, does this person have the right governance policy to do that? Do they have permissions? Do I have security agents installed? Then sometimes a ticket goes to the infrastructure team who has to reserve an IP address, register a DNS, configure a load balancer, clone a VM, run an automation script. All of that work takes time, right? Takes time, takes money, and that's usually what's standing in the way from people actually getting the private cloud they want. Something better than just slightly better VMware. You need something that end-to-end can manage this complexity. And that is where HPE has come in, not just with Morpheus, but actually through a lot of the very conscious investments over the last 5 to 10 years. Starting with GreenLake, right? A lot of folks know GreenLake from its financing model as an elastic way to approach capacity and purchases. However, a lot of the investment has actually been at the platform layer. Get things like single sign-on, role-based access, get good telemetry, get good understanding of how you're using your infrastructure. One of the things we announced earlier this year, though, was HPE's Cloud Ops software suite. So what is that? Well, I mentioned a very conscious approach to acquisitions and innovation from HPE, and one of those being where I came from, right? The acquisition of Morpheus data to help with the provisioning and lifecycle management of workloads, of your databases, your application stacks. Second, though, think about day two. Once your applications are provisioned, how are you doing observability? Using things like AIOps to reduce your mean time to resolution. And then lastly, data protection and resiliency. All of these investments, all these technologies, Morpheus, OpsRamp, and Zerto, are heterogeneous. We don't care about infrastructure from a hardware perspective. Yes, we love HPE, but we know you've got heterogeneous environments. You might be using multiple hardware stacks, multiple runtimes, multiple public clouds as well as private cloud. That's where we're headed with the Cloud Ops suite, is bringing these together in a much more tight way. But I want to talk a little bit about where the enterprise version of Morpheus picks up from the Essentials version that Julian went into depth on. So Morpheus Enterprise, our goal is to help you as IT really be that internal service provider. First and foremost, that means we have to make that on-prem mess a truly functioning private and hybrid cloud. So the ability for your end users or even your IT teams to go into a service catalog, hit a single API, hit a unified Terraform provider, and provision databases, web services, multi-tier apps, instantly, rather than having to wait days or weeks for that to get done. So provisioning workloads is what we do for a living, and making IT transparent, removing all of that friction by integrating all the tools that you already have. But not only are we provisioning workloads, we are able to provision and manage the runtimes that those workloads live on. And one of the things Julian touched on is that Morpheus, as a standalone, we've been using KVM since our dawn of existence. When we needed to rough out an integration into a hypervisor like VMware or AHV from Nutanix, we actually used libvirt, used KVM internally to do that development work. So we've got loads of experience with KVM, but it was a couple of years ago when our enterprises started talking to us about actually wanting a built-in runtime to land those workloads that we started putting the added polish around that, the high availability, the DRS, the vMotion, all those equivalencies that you'd look at from a VMware perspective. So that's what Julian went into depth on, and it's where really we turned into VM Essentials. So Morpheus VM Essentials, as Julian mentioned, I'll say it my way. It's Morpheus with a bunch of stuff turned off, right? It's the baby version of Morpheus for those virtualized focus points. But if you need the upstack automation, the blueprints, the policy guardrails, some of the things I've talked about, that's where Enterprise comes in. But both Essentials and Enterprise include that built-in KVM stack. We're provisioning workloads, provisioning runtimes. We're also able to attach cost and meaning to those activities so that you can do chargeback and showback, or shameback is a popular choice. So if you need to make sure that you're analyzing costs across all of your on-prem and your public cloud environments, that's what we can bring to the table. This is a view I like to share because it really shows that agnosticism, right? We want to honestly be a platform company that makes those runtimes less relevant, right? You need to be able to model your blueprints for your applications once, and then we will act as Google Translate so that you can provision into any environment at any time without having to context switch or jump between different API sets, different portals. We're that abstraction layer that makes all of that underpinning runtime much easier to deal with. But in addition to that, we're also trying to bring your teams closer together. So everybody here represents IT, I'm guessing, more and more. We see that being the platform hosting team. That's where we can integrate all these tools, but we also provide value from a security perspective. If you're trying to shift left and get closer to your internal product teams, you get the advantages of multi-tenancy, very fine-grained role-based access. If you're going to let teams provision through a service catalog, you got to make sure they stay in the guardrails. So a very rich policy engine. And then lastly, letting those teams provision things the way they want to. If they want to do this all as code, as part of a pipeline, they want to do it through something like a ServiceNow or through a Terraform provider, we don't care. We want to arm them with the ability to consume IT the way they want to make their job easier and your job easier. So Julian shared this logical model of the service structure for the Essentials version of Morpheus. This is the Enterprise version. You get a few more bells and whistles, but it's the same exact package. Version 8.0.12 of Enterprise is version 8.0.12 of Essentials. We've just slid some of the toggles and we've hid some of the features. You apply a new license to that same installation, and you instantly unlock the rest of the feature set. So no matter where you start, you have access to move up and down. Now, one of the things always happens in acquisitions is they look good on paper. They don't always come to fruition in the time that companies would like. I'm very proud of how fast this acquisition has turned into the Essentials version. We've embedded it into the private cloud products, and we've given that upgrade path to Morpheus Enterprise across the board. So a lot of options for you to think about this journey that you're on. We also have a lot of options from a services perspective. So if you need help getting there, our ANPS organization, our partner organization can help you with that analytics approach, with your replatforming or your journey all the way up to full hybrid cloud. So that's kind of where we netted out. You've got the cloud ops software stack, ability to address VMs, containers, or bare metal, and do that either as pure software or embedded into the various private cloud products that HPE has. So hopefully you take some time to get out on the show floor, go to the other sessions, still earlier in the day, but appreciate Julian, Adam, all your attention. Have a good rest of your HPE Discover.